I'm not even going to create a crazy hook about this. I'm just going to straight up tell you that the idea and the understanding people have around esters when it comes to anabolic compounds is just completely mind-blowingly wrong. I'm going to cut through the bullshit. I'm going to cut through the myths. I'm going to give you the down and dirty, what they are, how they're utilized, and when they should be appropriated within your program. So what an ester is essentially, it's an attachment to a compound that slows down or speeds up, relatively speeds up the metabolism of that compound. Okay, so understand that an ester that creates a longer time for a compound to be broken down, it's going to elongate or increase the amount of time that it's present within the system, but also it'll take longer to get out if you need it to get out. In addition, normally it allows for more stable blood levels. So if you have something that is introduced, a short-acting ester or an ester that is very quick, you will have the introduction of that anabolic, peak through blood levels and serum levels, and then drop very quickly. We could talk. I've talked about those effects in other estrogen videos, right? Estrogen being one of the main effectors of those spikes, but you don't want spikes essentially. There's very few cases where you do, depending on what you're looking for cosmetically, aesthetically at certain times. But generally, you want to keep blood levels as stable as possible, even as you start to taper things up or down, because that's going to mitigate side effects. So you're going to have essentially short-acting esters, long-acting esters, and what I would like to say is intermediate. Insulin has 4 types. I tried to mimic theirs so to create some congruency, but we'll just keep it very simple. A short-acting estrogen is a short-acting ester is going to be something like a propionate or an acetate. A long-acting ester, I would say, might be something more like an enanthate, or I can never pronounce this, but undecanoate, decanoate, right? Yes, so those are going to be more longer term esters. All right. Aside from the names, all right, there's a reason why you want to have certain things with a longer or shorter ester. For instance, if you are using a short-acting ester, more than likely it's because you want to be able to affect a change quickly, see what it does, and also pull it away quickly in the case that something negative arises. Something that is a longer-term ester might allow for you to not have such high injection frequency. It might be a lifestyle or habit improver. So for instance, if you're doing testosterone replacement therapy, the less often you have to inject is probably going to be a little bit more beneficial to your lifestyle, right? But with that, you also with less injection frequency, you also still allow for a little bit more unstable blood levels, okay? Those intermediate ones are going to be few and far between, but again, they provide a benefit of both. So how should you apply it? Now, you can speak to a ton of different bodybuilders and coaches and get a ton of different answers. In my personal opinion, all you're doing with the ester difference from compound to compound, let's use testosterone as an example, from a short to a long term. So let's say a test prop versus a test enanthate. Okay? You're getting testosterone in either case. With the shorter ester, the ester's smaller, so you're getting more testosterone per injection, let's say, but it all washes out to the same. I really only see the benefit of doing that is if you need to pull something out quickly in the terms of a contest prep. But in addition, if you're running that higher, the concentrations of those shorter esters are actually going to be lower, so you're going to need to have a lot more shot volume, for instance, okay? In a perfect world, if I'm taking 500 milligrams of testosterone a week, if I take an enanthate, which is generally going to be about 250 milligrams per ml, if I'm losing you with the math, it's okay. You don't need to memorize this. But if I want to take 500 tests and it's 250 per ml, I need 2 mLs, right? 250 times 2 of that testosterone, enanthate. If I want 500 of the prop, I need, which I was about to say it's 5 of them, but let me explain why. Test prop is essentially is usually going to be about 100 milligrams per ml. So 100 milligrams per ml for 500 milligrams, you're going to need 5 mLs. So 2 milliliters of oil, 5 milliliters of oil. You can see how somebody needing to take that much, especially when those doses go higher, it can literally be a pain in your ass, right? But there might be a reason for that. Now, when we're looking at lifestyle, off seasons, longevity, probably dealing with the long-acting ester is going to be better. If you're at the tail end of a contest prep and you have a client or you yourself or somebody whose water needs to be manipulated a little bit more drastically, using a short ester towards the tail end of a prep might be better, right? And the reason why I say a tail end, I don't think that it's very sustainable to use a short ester through the whole part of prep. I would use a long acting into a certain point, switch to short. You will have some sort of fluctuation because you're switching esters, and you might have an exchange of blood levels of that ester in there, but it'll level out if you do it further enough, and then now you have the short acting. And the reason why that's sometimes beneficial, and especially in relation to like similar to growth hormone, right? Some individuals, you keep the growth hormone all the way in because they just look good with it. And when you pull it, they get a little too flat or stringy. Same thing with the ester. Sometimes you keep the injectables, especially the testosterone, in all the way. Sometimes you pull it out. This is a very, very big red flag for a coach. Is he tells you, especially your first time working with him, that you are for sure going to pull them out, or more than likely pull them out. He's not really ever going to tell you to keep them in, unless he sees and he does a trial and error. Unless he says, okay, for this prep, I want to see how you react towards pulling them out, so that way we would know for next show or next offseason, whatever it may be, what that effect is going to be, okay? Now, I'm kind of going a little bit into the rabbit hole about the application of the esters, but that's because the idea, or excuse me, the meanings of the esters, or what they are, is very, very simple. It's just the amount of time that it takes to break down in the body and that attachment, and that can be manipulated, okay? Now, looking at the longevity piece, again, we talked about how less frequent injections might be better for your lifestyle, but you will still have the rises and falls. So you still want to keep a somewhat frequent injection frequency, not so much to keep the injectable in there at a sustained amount, but also to limit the amount of fluctuations, because that's where a lot of the side effects arise. So at the end of the day, the information I'm trying to give you here is to give you an understanding of why and how they can be used. A lot of times, and I've experienced this with past coaches, they will just have a cookie cutter way of doing it. They will approach every client the same way. They're all short esters are better than long esters, and not explain it to you. Why? Ask your coach why. If they can't articulate why, and they get upset at you, again, this is a personal, very personal for me, is you need to run. There should be a reason to everything that is being given to you and done within your program. And if your coach does not take the time to explain that to you when you ask, that's a complete red flag. Using esters as appropriate for a specific reason, whether it's a short or long, whether your coach has a certain philosophy, so long as they are open to taking a different direction when needed, is going to be very important to build that trust within you. So to recap it all, esters are simply an attachment to the compound that you're using, so that way you can manipulate the amount of time it takes to break down and get different results from that compound that the compound itself might not elicit. If you enjoy this information, please subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to know what it'd be like to work with me one-on-one and what my process is, feel free to shoot me a DM. Or if I message this to you, reply back with, hey coach, I want to know what's going on with your coaching process. I'd love to hear all about it. Or you can even fill out the application in my YouTube channel description or in my YouTube channel bio.